Well, welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's two chapters are Esther chapter 3 and 4. And for me, I'm going to remember these chapters more than any other chapter I read in the whole of 2021. And that's because, you see, where I'm standing is at the Hilton off-ramp. And there is the Hilton Life Hospital behind me where they've been fighting the COVID virus for the last couple of years. But this is where, during the looting of this year, I had to come and guard the suburb together with all the other residents. So guys were hiding down here with their guns. They dragged rocks and logs across the road to protect. So even if you are watching this from overseas, you'll remember what happened during halfway through this year. A couple of agitators managed to turn hundreds of thousands of decent civilians into criminals. They went on a 48-hour looting spree, burning shops and petrol stations and stealing goods, and malls were destroyed and suburbs were threatened. And so we were called out. They turned us into security guards overnight. Now, out of all the chapters that we could have been preaching on that particular weekend, we were going through a series. We had Esther chapter 3. I mean, there's 66 books of the Bible. There are dozens of chapters in those books, and this is the chapter we picked. This story is one of looting and one of carnage and genocide. And this is how it happened. Haman, the prime minister, was a bit of an egomaniac, wanted people to bow down and worship him, but Mordecai didn't. And so in a fit of fury, he goes to the king and managed to persuade the king. So he's an agitator close to government. Agitated the king to issue a decree that on a certain day, all the Jews' property was to be looted, and if they could, they'd kill any Jew they saw. And so it's this weekend, I read that chapter, the weekend of the looting. Can you believe it? And so let me tell you what we got out of that. Well, firstly, why did the looting happening back there, and why did the looting happen with us? And we came to the conclusion that it was a spiritual matter. It wasn't some guy with like a little short man syndrome, short guys who wanted to impress the world. No, you see, the devil wants to destroy access to Jesus Christ. If he could undo the Jewish people, Jesus would not have arrived. And so it was a demonic thing. And you see, if you look at the background, what did he use? Haman was described as an Agagite. And Mordecai, who refused to bow down to Haman, was a Benjamite. So Agag was a king of the Amalekites. And we're talking 1,000 years before this. Moses had said the Amalekites must be wiped out. 400 years after that, King Agag was coming up against Saul, and Saul refused to wipe him out. So Samuel, under the watchful eye of Saul, chopped King Agag to pieces. And the Persians remembered these things, man. They wrote them down. That's why we know so much about the Persian Empire. Now, Mordecai was a Benjamite from the tribe that Saul was. So there's a racial thing going on here. There's the Agagites and the Benjamites with hundreds of years of hatred. And Satan uses that. He uses racial tension. He uses history. He uses our fallibility. He uses anything he can. And so there was a spiritual root to this problem. Now, obviously, what happened in our situation is that people from around the world, possibly you even, were praying for KwaZulu-Natal then. And I mean, I get pastors phoning me from all corners of the globe saying millions of people are busy praying right now. And so when it stopped, we can't say there was a political solution. There was a God solution. Chapter 4 tells us how this situation was brought under control back there in Persia. Firstly, Mordecai and the people wail. They wail. They feel about it deeply. We've got to feel about the injustices around us deeply. I mean, Jesus looked at the injustices in Jerusalem and he wept. Shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. Felt deeply, because when you feel deeply, you move to action. Then we look at God using Esther, a very unlikely hero. I mean, this woman, orphan, slept with a married man in a beauty pageant, then became queen, stopped going to the Sabbath, celebrating the Sabbath. She was a closet believer, not, your archetype superwoman. And yet God used her. And then they understood, because everybody fasted and prayed. Even her women who were attending her in the palace fasted and prayed. And this is God intervenes in situations like this through prayer. And then both Mordecai and Esther realized, and it says in this verse, that you were born for such a time as this. We've been born for the places and the times that God has put us in. Whether you're living in Australia, whether you're living in South Africa, whether you're living in KwaZulu-Natal like me, God can use us even if we are nobody like Esther. He'll use us when we pray, and He uses us exactly where He's placed us.